It's cold outside. Today we are gonna dye some yarn with snow. Hi, this is Rebecca from ChemKnits, and as I said, we are gonna be dyeing with snow today. We are in the middle of a blizzard, so I think that we should take advantage of this fresh snow. We are gonna use a rainbow of KoolAid colors and fingering weight Peruvian Highland wool from Knit Picks. So the setup you see here is in my bathtub. I have a container for catching the liquid that falls. It won't catch all of it, but I'm going to want to show the colors that run through. I've got a cooling rack baking sheet because I don't have any mesh. And you know, I've got the yarn and the KoolAid. And I will, when it's time to start dyeing, I will go out and get a large bucket of snow. Now to prepare for this, I am going to pre-soak the undyed wool in cold water and for at least 30 minutes, and when that's ready we'll come back and start loading up some snow. So my yarn is pre-soaked, and as you can see there's nothing dripping out the bottom, so I've removed much of the excess water. I have spread it out on top of the baking sheet as much as I could, so that way I could cover a reasonable area. I'm wearing gloves so that way I will not stain my fingers with the KoolAid. So now comes the snow loading. I just went outside, grabbed a huge bucket of snow, and now I am just going to sprinkle it on top of the yarn. Now, this is a dyeing experiment because I have never done anything like this before. And, you know, I'm not sure how much color we'll get in the fiber, and how much we'll see that has run through. But we will see what we end up with. So this is a method of applying the dye to the fiber. And once, you know, all the snow has melted and all the dye has given a slow chance to like kind of drip through the wool, we will then, I will then steam the fibers in the microwave, which will set the dye, and we'll look at our finished yarn. I'm trying to cover the sides so that way the dye doesn't come into direct contact with the yarn. And I think I should have this set up right before kickoff of the Super Bowl. All right. I'm going to dry off my hands. So I'm not really going for a rainbow gradient, but I thought it would be fun to play with rainbow colors. So I'm literally just ripping the top off of the KoolAid packets and then sprinkling it onto the snow. Think of this kind of like a ginormous snow cone. Now, because of the way I've laid the fibers out when this soaks through, you know, I don't think it'll be like one continuous gradient, but I've never tried this before. So we will see. Already that's looking really cool. So I'm doing it in the bathtub to give ease of cleanup. With snow, I don't think you could do it outside. But I do know some people who will do ice dyeing outside, and you actually will let the sun set the dye. But I don't think that they use like food-based fibers. They tend to use they'll use like commercial acid dyes. The elusive lime green lemonade. I had to buy this on eBay. Today someone asked where I get KoolAid. I live in the United States, so I can find it at my local grocery store. But for the greens and blues, I do have to go online because my local store has mostly red colored flavors. Hopefully I'm not blocking this too much. Oh, this looks so cool. I have no idea how long it'll take the snow to melt. The bathroom is actually the coldest room in my house, so especially when the doors are shut like they are now. But I will come back periodically and show you what the progress looks like. All right. Well, that looks like a fun, pretty cake or something. So now we are at the waiting stage and we will wait for the snow to melt. Who knows if it'll take all night? I will try to give you updates with the timing. But as with all my experiments, this could fail horribly or it could work and be totally awesome. So let's see what we get. So it's been almost 20 minutes and I'm not sure how well maybe you can see on the camera, but there's a little bit of pitting in some areas of the snow. Maybe the salts from the KoolAid are helping it melt. But it's been about 20 minutes since I added it and this is where we are. So I imagine that this is going to be a process that's going to go all night. We are now an hour in, and you can see we are having some melting snow. A drip just fell right there, and you can see some dye that is running down into the drain. The pitting is more pronounced, so the food coloring, the KoolAid is soaking through the fiber. And I guess I don't have a ton more I can zoom in. You can also see that we have some pink that actually continues back over there. We do have some pink from the red starting to get on the fiber, and over on the other side there's a tiny bit of blue and purple that's showing up right there. So it's really, really hard for me to not like peek because I have no idea how well this is working or not. But given that the runoff over there appears to be yellow, you know, there's dripping, well, of course there's dripping happening everywhere, but hopefully more of the melt will go into the yarn, kind of be wicked into the yarn versus going over the edge and then not making it onto the yarn at all. So, but I do think unless we get enough liquid and it really does wick through the fibers very well, we might end up with a white patch there. And as long as we don't have a ton of white patches, I will be really happy. An hour and a half in, and it is shrinking more. You won't really be able to see on the video because you don't have a perspective, but there's a good like covering of water inside the bowl, so it is absolutely going through the yarn. And I mean, look how pitted it is right there with the blue. I really like how the yellow has been absorbed by both the green and the orange. I think it looks really, really cool. I'd pick it up to show, like I can see that in there that there's some like swirls of color. I'd pick it up to try to show you, but I mean, I guess you can get a sense of the swirls of color over there. But I'm afraid that by picking up, I could disrupt the way that this diffusion is happening. So, and as for this piece, I can see the palest of pink right there. So I don't think I'll have like a huge solid white portion. And look and see how like this green is wicked up through there. Now there was no green dye on that, and so it's just wicking, and that's like really fun and cool. I've never allowed the dye, when I've applied dye to the yarn, I've never allowed it to like cool, remain in the yarn long enough to let some diffusion happen. So peeking back at some of the pictures from earlier when this started, I'm amazed at how much paler the snow is right here on top. At the beginning when I first sprinkled on the Kool-Aid, you know, the colors were very dark and bright, probably because it had not yet dissolved into the ice water. So this is just really cool. It got me really excited. I think that, well, depending on when this finishes tonight or tomorrow, I think that I might try this again with some other types of fiber, just to see what happens. 2.5 hours in, and we seem to be starting to turn a corner. You can see a lot of the yarn itself is now exposed. I really like how there appears to be tonal variation. This isn't something that I get a lot when I dye with Kool-Aid, but just look at this green right here and how there's different coloration in there because of the different lengths of time that the dye has gone on different parts of yarn. And again, this white patch over here is getting smaller and smaller. So, yay! 4 hours in, and the Patriots won the Super Bowl. Woohoo! But you can see that there is still snow on top of my yarn. So I think that I will let this thaw through morning because I don't want to wait a few more hours and keep checking on it. The nice thing is that we can see that the yarn looks amazing. I'm thrilled with the results and hope we get a lot more snow so I can try this a lot more over the rest of the winter. I'm curious what would happen if you did like Wilton's Purple on top of ice. Ooh, I think I'm gonna have to try that one next. I was a little concerned that, you know, maybe this won't set very well because maybe the citric acid would be diluted too much. But then again, I routinely will do 1 or 2 packets of Kool-Aid in many, you know, in like, what, 10 cups of water, and there can't be that much water, as much water that came off from this. So I think that it's still going to be acidic enough that the colors will set. I will have to compare it to my hand-painted rainbow colorway to see if this is as vibrant as that. But, oh man, am I excited. 5.5 hours in, all the snow is melted, but I am just about to go to bed. So I'm going to be leaving this here overnight, and I'll take care of it in the morning. Good morning. Not a lot has changed since last night. I mean, the last tiny bit of snow is gone. I'm not sure how well you can see, but there is, you know, some dirt and snow, so this will require a little more washing than normal. But let's take a look and see what we've got. I'm curious if by squishing I can get any of the dye to move through this pink. And, you know, it's definitely still damp, but oh, that's interesting. When I'm squeezing it, the water that's coming out is mostly clear. So most of the excess dye has already dripped out of the yarn. So that's exciting. So I feel okay picking it up. Okay, and so we can see that there's some other white patches in here. So it's not just that one area. But overall, this looks pretty cool. Notice how I'm letting it touch each other since my squish attempt did not move any color. So I'm not being horribly careful moving it around. Now when I hand paint, there is a lot more liquid in the yarn. So when it comes time to secure it, I have to be a lot more careful. But given that I could not squish around, picking it up right now, I'm not being very careful with how I handle it. I am, however, going to wrap it in plastic wrap, and I will try to separate, oh gosh, I don't think you can see what I'm doing, but I'm just wrapping saran wrap kind of around the sections. I could make a jelly roll, but I don't know how much food coloring will leak out when I heat this up in the microwave. I'm using a microwave safe plate and just taking this plastic and kind of encasing it just to try to separate pieces of it. It's not perfect. You can see it's falling out over there. All right, there we are. It's a lot easier to take the saran wrap, lay it out in like a big rectangle or oval, lay the skein on top, and then wrap the saran wrap up. So that way there is like boats separating the different parts from each other. This way if we get a lot of runoff, hopefully like some of this runoff from the red won't get to the green. But I don't think we're gonna get a lot of it. I think that the runoff already happened, and I'll show you that in a second. So now I'm gonna just take one more piece and put it over the top. I will say that even though I let this sit overnight, there is absolutely still, it's still wet. So I don't need to add any water to microwave it. So now I'm gonna go and microwave this on high for 1 minute. But before I get to that, I want to look at this waste color that we've got right here. So I've got a paper towel to kind of test the color because I'm curious. And we've got an orangey kind of red in there. So not horrendously ugly. Could theoretically be used for another project if, you know, I needed orangey browns or something for anything. But I don't. The reason why it is so red is that the red KoolAids are much more concentrated in the amount of dye that they have than, say, the blue. But anyway, I'm going to go microwave and then show you what we've got. So after a minute, it's a little warm, but not hot enough for me. So I'm going to do a second minute. And then I think I'll let this sit before the rinse. I'm pretty confident about the dye having set. I just want this to get steamy. And if I need to, I will even use a third minute. But, you know, I just kind of do it by touch. So after 2 minutes in the microwave, I've taken it out. It is not just warm, but it's pretty hot to touch. I mean, I can handle to keep my hand on it, but not for long. I've taken it out of the microwave and I'm going to leave it to slowly cool to room temperature. You don't want to rinse it while the fibers are warm because you don't want to risk felting the fibers. You don't want to shock it by suddenly getting it too cold in the water. This can take, you know, an hour or more, but just be patient and go work on another project while you let it sit and wait, and then we'll be back. It is the moment of truth. Time to put my snow dyed yarn into a lukewarm dye bath to rinse it out. Well, that's a good sign. So I put it and I've submerged it in water, and the water is clear. Now notice that I was so confident about this that I did not put on gloves, and I'll show you why I was so confident. This is the saran wrap I used to microwave it. And maybe you can't tell with the yarn in the bowl, but there is no dye whatsoever in the saran wrap. Whenever I've hand painted stuff, there's always been some dye left over in the saran wrap. But anyway, I need to wash this yarn and then hang it up to dry. I'm going to add some, this is just a generic dish soap, to the water. That's probably a little too much. But you know, I guess we're rinsing out the remaining citric acid. Okay, now the water looks a little green, but that's because I just added soap to it. But I don't think anything is coming out of the yarn. Remember to take care not to felt your yarn, but rinse it thoroughly. You want the water to run clear. And I will show you what we've got once it's dry. So here we have it, our final skein of snow-dyed yarn. We got remarkable coverage. I am pretty impressed with how it turned out in the end. And I'm also really happy with some of the variation that we see within certain points. Some of the blue here is probably from the Ice Blue Raspberry Lemonade, but you see it looks like that we got some breaking of the grape. And I really like the subtle variations of color that we get from where they mixed in the melting. In a way, some of the coloration is a little more consistent and at the same time more varied when compared with hand painting. When I've been hand painting, there'll be lots of, maybe lots of variation, like in a stripe, but this, I can't really articulate, but it is subtly different, and it was certainly a lot of fun to do. Let me just flip this over. So see, this side has a lot less white in it. I'm really happy with the coverage that we got. If there's some of the white spots bothered you, you could over dye those areas. There's certainly different options, but overall, I am really, really happy with how this turned out. Now I just have to decide what I'm going to knit with it. This is Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you for sticking with me for this snow dyeing experiment. Despite all the shoveling that I have done these last few days, I sort of have to say I cannot wait for it to snow again. Happy dyeing!